This is archivist Helen Lindsay talking on Saturday Live, a BBC Radio 4 programme, and she's joined by Michael Portillo, the former Secretary of State for Defence. What she's talking about is her investigations at the National Archives Centre of her father's records, or at least those records that MI5 kept. These proved to be surprisingly extensive, given the fact that he was not a spy, not any kind of legitimate target for MI5, except he happened to be a member of the Communist Party. She says that by looking at these extensive records that she found there, she discovered that what MI5 is really at, what they're doing, is the minor censorship of people's ability to function. Repeat, the minor censorship of people's ability to function. That is what MI5 is doing. Not catching spies, not catching terrorists, but stopping ordinary people from functioning.
Well, he was an Australian who came over to London in 1927. So he was born in the year 1900. He always wrote. He was a writer that never did anything else. And it's difficult to count exactly how many books, but it's more than 150 books. And he became a Marxist in 1936. I'm sure the Spanish Civil War will have been part of that thinking. Was a committed communist, was a member of the Communist Party all his life from then on. The first paper in the MI5 files is in 1936, and he was continuously under surveillance until the last file that's been let out is dated 1961. And I think a lot of communists knew that they were being observed, but I don't think they knew how much and to what extent. So when you look at the files, there are copies of bank statements, tax returns, lots and lots of postal intercepts. So they had some Russian visitors. They did occasionally have visitors from Russia. When they came in, I think I was a teenager at the time. So when the Russian visitors came in, they said, "Oh, we've got a visitor. We've got an extra. There's some extras outside." So yeah, my mum went to say hello and then took them a cup of tea, which they accepted. And at the time, it was a big joke because we thought, "Oh, that's so rubbish. They weren't hiding." But I think now, after looking at what was actually happening, I think they were quite clearly must have done that on purpose. They wanted us to know that there was somebody there because there was lots of other surveillance. There were lots of other reports of people saying, Lindsay is being driven around or this or that, or he's gone here and there, and there are cars and there are registrations of the cars. So obviously, and we knew nothing about that, obviously. So I think this particular sort of visit they will have known about. But the thing was, my father couldn't drive. So there are quite a few papers in the files where they're sort of suspiciously saying he's been driven here and he's been driven there, but actually he didn't drive. So that was the reason.
People are kept under surveillance. I sometimes gave authority for people to be put under surveillance. Sometimes gave authority for people's phones to be tapped. What's quite remarkable to me about this story is that at the same time as this family was being put under surveillance, the security services were missing the really big fish. I mean, this is the period when Philby was being missed. Burgess and Maclean, I think, had already absconded to Moscow. The people who really were doing tremendous damage to the United Kingdom, I mean, untold damage. Philby was head of our counter-intelligence service against the Soviet Union, and he was a Soviet spy, and there were others. These people were missed.
The files that do not make any suggestion of spying, and I think it's quite interesting because everybody assumes, oh, did they think he was a spy? And of course, at one point I did think, oh my God, maybe he was. But the whole point is, I don't think this was about spying as such, not directly anyway. I've spent a long time, and I got quite obsessed at certain points of trying to work out what was all this about. Why were they taking such an interest? Because there's quite a lot of files on my father, more than on a lot of other equivalent writers at the time. And I think it's about the sort of minor censorship of people's ability to function. So they wanted to know what he was doing,